The fluorescent lights of Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago hummed their familiar tune as Sarah Mitchell hurried through the sliding doors, her breath forming small clouds in the November air. She was late again. Traffic on Lakeshore Drive had been a nightmare, and her boss at the insurance firm had kept her 20 minutes past her usual leaving time. Guilt gnawed at her stomach as she punched the elevator button for the 4th floor. Emma had been in this hospital for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of watching her 13-year-old daughter grow paler, thinner, more withdrawn. The leukemia diagnosis had come like a thunderbolt in late September, right at the start of 8th grade. One day, Emma was complaining about pre-algebra homework and arguing with her friends about which TikTok dance was trending. The next, she was undergoing her first round of chemotherapy, her thick auburn hair already starting to fall out in clumps. Sarah stepped off the elevator and nodded mechanically at the nurses' station. She knew all their names now: Jennifer, Marcus, Patricia. They'd become her second family, though she'd never wanted this particular community. Room 412 was halfway down the hall, and through the small window in the door, Sarah could see Emma sitting up in bed, surprisingly animated. Her daughter was smiling, actually smiling, something Sarah hadn't seen much of lately. Emma was talking to someone, gesturing with her hands the way she used to do when explaining something she was excited about. Sarah pushed open the door, and the conversation stopped abruptly. Emma looked up, her pale face flushing slightly, and a man stood up from the chair beside her bed. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with grey hair and kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore dark blue work pants and a matching shirt with a name tag that read, Thomas, Janitorial Services. "Oh, hey, Mom," Emma said quickly. "This is Mr. Thomas. We were just talking." The janitor nodded respectfully at Sarah, a warm but somewhat reserved smile on his weathered face. "Good evening, Mom. I was just finishing up in here. I'll let you two have your time together." He gathered his cleaning cart from the corner of the room. "Thank you," Sarah said, though she felt slightly confused. The room didn't look like it had just been cleaned, and there was something about the way Emma had been so engaged that seemed unusual. After Mr. Thomas left, Sarah settled into the chair he'd vacated, still warm from his presence. "He seems nice," she offered, studying her daughter's face. "Yeah, he is," Emma said, but she didn't elaborate. Instead, she reached for the remote and turned on the TV, a clear signal that the subject was closed. Over the next few days, Sarah noticed Mr. Thomas more frequently. He seemed to always be on the 4th floor during her evening visits, pushing his cart with its mops and cleaning supplies, offering quiet greetings to the nurses and patients. There was something gentle about his demeanor, something that put people at ease. One evening, Sarah arrived earlier than usual. Her boss had actually let her leave on time for once. As she approached Emma's room, she heard voices again. She paused outside the door, not wanting to interrupt, but curious about who was visiting. "So, if x equals 12, and you substitute that back into the original equation," it was Mr. Thomas's voice, patient and encouraging. "Then 2 times 12 plus 7 equals 31. Emma's voice was bright, triumphant. Sarah's hand froze on the door handle. "Math. They were doing math." "Exactly right," Mr. Thomas said. "You see, you understand this better than you think you do. The chemotherapy makes you tired, makes it harder to concentrate, but your mind is still sharp, Emma. Don't let this disease make you forget that." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She waited a moment, composing herself before pushing open the door. Again, Mr. Thomas stood up, and again Emma's face showed that mixture of happiness and something else, perhaps embarrassment at being caught. "I should get back to work," Mr. Thomas said, but Sarah stopped him. "Wait," she said, her voice catching slightly. Were you helping her with math?" Mr. Thomas glanced at Emma, who looked down at her hands. "Your daughter mentioned she was worried about falling behind in school. I told her I used to be pretty good with numbers, and we've just been reviewing a few things. I hope that's all right." Sarah's throat felt tight. Here was this janitor, this man who cleaned hospital rooms for a living, spending his time teaching her daughter math. "It's more than all right," she managed to say. "It's wonderful, thank you." Mr. Thomas nodded, that same warm but reserved smile crossing his face. "She's a bright kid. It's no trouble at all." He pushed his cart toward the door. "I'll see you tomorrow, Emma. We can work on those word problems you were asking about." After he left, Sarah sat down heavily in the chair and looked at her daughter. "How long has this been going on?" Emma shrugged, but there was a light in her eyes that had been absent for weeks. "About a week and a half. He noticed I had my math textbook, and we just started talking. He's really smart, Mum. He explains things in a way that actually makes sense, not like Mr. Peterson at school, who just rushes through everything." Sarah reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. For the first time since the diagnosis, she felt a flicker of something beyond fear and exhaustion. Hope, maybe, or at least gratitude that in this sterile place of sickness and struggle, there were still unexpected kindnesses. Outside the window, the Chicago skyline glittered against the darkening November sky. Somewhere in this massive city, she thought, there are good people doing small, beautiful things. And one of them was pushing a janitor's cart through these halls, teaching algebra to a sick girl who needed to remember that her life was about more than just surviving. Thanksgiving came and went with Emma still in the hospital. Sarah had brought slices of pumpkin pie from their favorite bakery on Michigan Avenue, and they'd eaten them together while watching the parade on the small TV mounted on the wall. Emma had grown weaker that week, the latest round of chemotherapy hitting her particularly hard, but she still asked about her math homework, still wanted to know if Mr. Thomas had been by. He had, Sarah learned. Even on Thanksgiving Day, he'd stop by Emma's room, not to clean, but to drop off a set of practice problems he'd written out by hand on graph paper, along with a small card that read, "Happy Thanksgiving, keep fighting." The nurses had started to notice too. Jennifer, the head nurse on the floor, mentioned it to Sarah one evening as she was checking Emma's vitals. "That Thomas is something special," Jennifer said, her voice warm. "I've seen him in here with your daughter almost every evening. At first, I thought maybe he was just being friendly, but Patricia told me she's seen them working through math problems together. Been doing it for weeks now." Sarah nodded. "I don't know why he does it. I've tried to thank him properly, even offered to pay him for his time, but he won't hear of it. Says it's his pleasure." Jennifer smiled knowingly. "Some people are just like that. Born teachers, I guess. Though I have to say, in 15 years of nursing, I've never seen a janitor spend his breaks tutoring patients. Most folks in his position would just want to finish their shift and go home." That conversation stuck with Sarah. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's treatments, she found herself in the hospital cafeteria, nursing a cup of terrible coffee and staring at her laptop screen. The quarterly reports for her insurance firm blurred before her eyes. She couldn't concentrate. Instead, she found herself typing "Thomas Janitor Children's Memorial Hospital, Chicago" into Google. Nothing came up. She tried different variations, feeling slightly guilty, like she was invading someone's privacy. But her curiosity had been sparked. Who was this man who had so quietly become such an important part of her daughter's life? The next evening, Sarah arrived at the hospital to find Emma's room empty. Panic seized her heart until a nurse quickly explained that Emma had just been taken down for an MRI scan, a routine check to see how the tumors were responding to treatment. She'd be back in about 40 minutes. Sarah decided to wait in the family lounge down the hall. As she approached, she heard Mr. Thomas's voice coming from inside, talking to someone on his phone. "No, I can't make it to the university dinner," he was saying. "I know it's for the emeritus faculty, but I have commitments here." "Yes, I understand that, but this is more important to me right now." "I appreciate that, Dean Morrison, but my decision is final. Send my regrets to the mathematics department." Sarah froze. Mathematics department? University? Emeritus faculty? Mr. Thomas ended the call and sighed deeply. When he turned and saw Sarah standing in the doorway, his face registered surprise, then something like resignation. "You heard that," he said. "It wasn't a question." Sarah walked into the lounge slowly, her mind racing. "I don't understand. You're not really a janitor, are you?" "Mr. Thomas gestured to one of the worn sofas, and they both sat down. Outside the window, December snow was beginning to fall, dusting the city in white. He was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah waited, sensing that this was a story that needed to be told carefully. "I was a professor," he finally said, "at the University of Chicago. Mathematics. I taught there for 37 years, specialized in number theory and abstract algebra. Published papers, advised doctoral students, the whole academic career." He paused, his hands clasped together. "My wife, Catherine, she got sick about 5 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. We spent a lot of time in hospitals, including this one." Sarah's throat tightened. She didn't interrupt. "After she died," Mr. Thomas continued, his voice steady but soft, "I retired. I couldn't stand being in that office anymore, surrounded by books and equations while the world felt so empty. I was 62, too young to just sit at home, too heartbroken to know what to do with myself." He looked directly at Sarah. "I started volunteering here. Patient transportation at first. Then I saw they needed janitorial staff. I took the job. Nobody here knew about my background, and I preferred it that way. It was honest work, simple work. It gave me a reason to get up in the morning." "But why didn't you tell anyone?" Sarah asked. "The hospital could have used you in so many other ways, tutoring programs, patient enrichment." "Because I didn't want to be Professor Thomas anymore," he said quietly. "I wanted to be useful in a way that didn't come with expectations or titles. When I clean a room, that room is clean, it's concrete, immediate, there's no ambiguity." He smiled slightly. "And then I met Emma. She reminded me so much of the students I used to teach. Curious, intelligent, frustrated by setbacks but determined. She had her textbook out one evening, crying because she couldn't understand the problems, and she was afraid she'd fail 8th grade because of all this." He gestured vaguely at the hospital around them. "I couldn't walk away from that." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "You've given her something to hold on to. Do you know that? In all of this, the treatments, the fear, the isolation from her friends, those math sessions with you are what she looks forward to. She told me last week that you make her feel normal again, like she's still herself." Mr. Thomas's eyes were bright behind his glasses. "She's a remarkable young woman. It's been my privilege." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding between them. Then Sarah asked the question that had been forming in her mind. "Will you keep teaching her, even now that I know who you really are?" "If she wants me to, and if you'll allow it, I'll be there every evening until she's well enough to leave this place," Mr. Thomas said. "And when she does leave, if she ever needs help with her math homework, she has my number." Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Professor Thomas." He smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. "Just Thomas is fine." Down the hall, they heard the elevator ding, and the sound of a gurney being wheeled back toward Emma's room. Sarah stood up, and Thomas did too. "One more thing," Sarah said as they walked back toward room 412. "Why didn't you tell Emma about who you were?" Thomas paused outside the door. "Because to her, I'm not a professor or a PhD or someone important. I'm just the janitor who likes math. And sometimes that's exactly who someone needs you to be." The MRI results came back better than expected. Dr. Reeves, Emma's oncologist, explained that the tumors had shrunk by nearly 40%. It wasn't a cure. Leukemia was a long battle, but it was significant progress. Emma could potentially go home in another week, continue outpatient treatment, and if things continued improving, maybe even return to school after the winter break. "The day, Dr. Reeves delivered the news," Emma cried. But for the first time in months, they were tears of relief rather than fear. Sarah held her daughter close, feeling the fragile cage of her ribs, the bones too prominent now, but also feeling the strength still there, the fighter that Emma had always been. That evening, Thomas arrived during his usual break time, and Emma practically bounced in her bed, as much as she could bounce given her weakened state, to tell him the news. "Doctor, Reeves says I might get to go home next week, and maybe even go back to school in January." Thomas's face lit up with genuine joy. "Emma, that's wonderful news, truly wonderful." He sat down in his usual chair. "Does this mean you're going to abandon your poor old math tutor?" "Never," Emma said firmly. "Besides, I need you. Pre-algebra is hard enough without missing 2 months of school. If I'm going back in January, I need to be ready." Thomas pulled out his ever-present notebook. Sarah had learned that he carried it everywhere, filling it with custom problems designed specifically for Emma's level and interests. "In that case, I have a challenge for you today. Word problems involving percentages. Very practical stuff." As they settled into their routine, Sarah excused herself to get coffee. In the hallway, she ran into Dr. Reeves, who was updating charts at the nurses' station. "Mrs. Mitchell," Dr. Reeves said, looking up, "I wanted to mention something. Emma's progress has been remarkable, and while the chemotherapy is certainly doing its job, there's another factor I think we should acknowledge." Sarah tilted her head, curious. "What's that?" "Her mental state," Dr. Reeves said. "Depression and anxiety are incredibly common in pediatric cancer patients, and they can actually impact recovery outcomes. But Emma has maintained an unusually positive outlook these past few weeks. The nurses tell me she's been working on her schoolwork with one of the staff members." She smiled. "That kind of mental engagement, that sense of purpose and normalcy, it matters. It really does." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "That would be Thomas. He's been incredible with her." "Well, whatever he's doing, encourage him to keep doing it," Dr. Reeves said. "The body and mind are connected in ways we're still learning to understand. Emma's fighting this disease on every front, and that's making all the difference." The week passed quickly. Sarah began the preparations to bring Emma home, setting up a small medical station in the corner of Emma's bedroom, arranging the schedule of outpatient treatments and checkups, coordinating with Emma's school about the work she'd need to complete. On Emma's last evening in the hospital, Thomas arrived with something different. Instead of his usual notebook, he carried a wrapped package. "What's this?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. "A going-away present," Thomas said. "Open it." Emma tore off the paper to reveal a beautiful hardcover book, Journey Through Genius, The Great Theorems of Mathematics, by William Dunham. Inside the front cover, Thomas had written an inscription. "For Emma, mathematics is not just about numbers and equations. It's about persistence, creativity, and the courage to tackle problems that seem impossible at first glance. You've shown all of these qualities in your battle with this illness. As you continue your journey, remember that every great mathematician started exactly where you are now, curious, determined, and unafraid to ask for help when needed. Keep solving problems both on paper and in life. Your friend and tutor, Thomas." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Thomas replied gently. "But I do want you to promise me something. Don't let this setback define you. You're going to go back to school, and some days are going to be hard. You might be behind in some subjects. You might feel different from your classmates. But you're stronger than you realize, and you've learned something they haven't. The true resilience comes from getting up every single day and trying again, even when it's difficult." Sarah, standing in the doorway, had to turn away to wipe her eyes. "Also," Thomas continued, reaching into his pocket, "here's my phone number and email address. If you ever need help with math homework, or honestly, if you just want to talk, please reach out. I mean that." Emma took the card he handed her. "Will you come visit sometimes?" "I'd like that very much," Thomas said. "With your mother's permission, of course." Sarah nodded emphatically. "You're welcome any time." The next morning was discharge day. The nurses helped Sarah pack up Emma's belongings, The cards and drawings that had covered the walls, the books and games, the IV pole that Emma had decorated with stickers to make it less scary. Jennifer hugged Emma goodbye and made her promise to send updates. As they wheeled Emma down to the main entrance, they passed Thomas in the hallway. He was mopping a floor, his cart beside him, doing the job he'd chosen. But when he looked up and saw them, his face broke into that warm smile. "Good luck out there," he said to Emma. "Remember what we talked about, one problem at a time." "One problem at a time," Emma repeated, smiling back. In the car, as Sarah navigated the winter streets of Chicago, Emma was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "Do you think Mr. Thomas was always a janitor? I mean, he knows so much about math, like really advanced stuff, more than just what we do in 8th grade. Sarah glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror. She'd wondered if Emma had suspected. "What makes you ask that?" "The way he explains things, and the book he gave me. It's not like a middle school textbook, it's serious math. The kind of thing a professor would read." Emma paused. "I don't care if he's a janitor or a professor or whatever. He's the kindest person I've ever met. He didn't have to help me, but he did." Sarah felt pride surge through her chest. "You're absolutely right. Who someone is matters more than what they do for work." They drove in silence for a bit longer, the city giving way to their neighborhood in Oak Park. The snow had stopped, and weak December sunlight filtered through the clouds. "I think when I grow up," Emma said suddenly, "I want to be like him. Not necessarily teach math, but be the kind of person who sees someone struggling and decides to help, even when there's nothing in it for them." Sarah's eyes blurred with tears, but she kept them on the road. "I think that's a beautiful goal, Emma, and I think you're already well on your way." That evening, after Emma was settled in her own bed, sleeping in her own room, after so many weeks away, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is Thomas. Jennifer gave me your number. I hope that's all right. I just wanted to say it was an honor to work with Emma these past weeks. Please keep me updated on her progress. And if there's anything I can do, rides to appointments, help with homework, or just a friendly visit, please don't hesitate to ask. Wishing your family all the best. Thomas." Sarah typed back quickly. "Thank you for everything you've done for Emma, and for reminding us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear janitor uniforms and carry mops. You made an unbearable situation bearable. We'll never forget that." Outside her window, the streetlights flickered on, casting pools of warm light on the snow-covered sidewalks. Somewhere in the city, Thomas was probably finishing his shift at the hospital, mopping floors and emptying trash cans, doing the work he'd chosen because it was simple and honest and good. And somewhere in this house, her daughter was sleeping peacefully, dreaming perhaps of equations and theorems, of battles fought and challenges overcome, of a kind man who had taught her that wisdom and compassion can come from the most unexpected places. Life, Sarah thought, was full of surprises. Some were terrible, diagnoses that turned your world upside down. But some were beautiful. Strangers who became friends, janitors who became teachers, and sick children who found reasons to keep fighting. As she turned off the kitchen light and headed upstairs to check on Emma one more time, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months. Genuine hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of someone drowning, but the steady, warm hope of someone who had witnessed human kindness at its finest and knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they wouldn't face them alone. In the hallway, she paused at Emma's door and peeked inside. Her daughter was curled up on her side, the mathematics book Thomas had given her on the nightstand beside her bed, within easy reach. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more treatments, more uncertainty, more fear to overcome. But tomorrow would also bring opportunity for healing, for learning, for growing stronger. One problem at a time, Sarah thought, remembering Thomas's words. One problem at a time, and with people like him in the world, anything seemed possible.